Today on Tamriel Talk, I discuss the ins and outs of the Alliance War PvP zone in Elder Scrolls Online, and dance your tears away, worries for another day, let the music play down at Fraggle Rock. Let's get to it. Howdy folks, and welcome back to another episode of Tamriel Talk. My name is Richie, aka Bogotter, and this show is all about the Elder Scrolls Online. Now this is episode number 4, and today we're going to be talking about the Alliance War. Now if you don't know what that means or what that is, then you're in the right place, because I'm going to talk all about the feature from front to back, side to side, left and right, up and down, frick and frack, spick and span. Probably won't do half of those things, but let's talk about PvP. Okay, so ZeniMax Online Studios has an arduous task of bringing the fans of the single-player Elder Scrolls games into an MMO environment, right? And they also have expectations from fans of MMOs who want to have a really, feature-full MMO experience with this MMO as well. So it's not an easy task, and I think ZeniMax is up to it. Now, one of the things that happens naturally when you go from a single-player game to a massively multiplayer game is you have to have things for groups of people to actually do. And there's an expectation as well that some of those activities will include bashing in the skulls of other players. So there has to be some sort of PvP in the Elder Scrolls Online. What is kind of surprising, or maybe not, depending on how much you've researched it, is that PvP is actually going to be a huge feature in the Elder Scrolls Online. And I say it's a surprise just because Elder Scrolls games are single-player affairs with no PvP. So to have it be like one of the core features of the game is interesting, and not from an MMO's perspective. We kind of expect that, but from an Elder Scrolls perspective, wow, I had to throw a lot of caveats because as I was saying those things, I read all of these comments. I anticipated all these comments coming in based on me saying that. So anyway, let's stay on topic here. So those of you who are kind of familiar with how MMOs work, there's kind of like this trend right now to have like this open world PvP zone, mass battles, siege warfare, and different things like that. And a lot of people are going to reference Guild Wars 2 world versus world because they have like this, 3-faction server versus server combat. But for those who have played Dark Ages of Camelot, I did not play, but I've heard many people talk about how this was the greatest, PvP experience in an MMO. That's kind of where the roots of world versus world and now this Alliance War is coming from. They had a 3-faction realm versus realm combat in Dark Ages of Camelot, and Matt Fireroar, who's the head honcho at ZeniMax, he is he was actually one of the developers working on Dark Ages of Camelot, so he's going to pull from the experiences of making that great PvP game and infuse Elder Scrolls Online with that kind of functionality. So the Elder Scrolls Online will have the Alliance War. Now this is going to be 3 factions, right? The Daggerfall Covenant, the Aldmeri Dominion, and the Ebonheart Pact are going to be the 3 different factions that are going to be competing for this huge swath of land in the center of Tamriel called Cyrodiil. Now, these factions, I'll probably do another episode of Tamriel Talk where I kind of talk about the factions in detail, but, suffice to say that they all want to control this center point, and that's where the players are going to meet to, have it out, duke it out, siege warfare, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, Cyrodiil itself is said by the developers to be approximately 9 times the size of any of the other regular zones, so we're talking about a huge swath of land. I think I've said swath twice in this video, 3 times now, which is more times than I've said swath in any of my other videos. In fact, probably more than all my other videos combined. So, feel privileged. I don't know what I'm talking about. So, the Alliance battle. Yes, swath. 4 times. There are things to do in Cyrodiil, whether you're a small group or a large group. Now, if you're just going in there by yourself or with a small group of friends, you can kind of go on the outskirts of a large battle and try to pick any stragglers off from the opposing team that kind of get a little bit too far away from the group. Or you can kind of, there's quests and different objectives you can take on when you're in a small group There's also resource nodes like mining nodes, farms, and lumber mills that you can attack with a small group. And if you're in a very large organized group, you can actually engage in siege warfare. You can try to take keeps away from the enemies, or defend a keep away from your enemies. You can put down a whole bunch of siege weaponry, whether it's ballista or catapults or lightning trebuchet and different things like that. And you can go to war. Now there's a progression system in place here. Now, anybody who wants to participate in the Alliance War at level 10 can do so, starting at level 10, and you can level all the way up to max level of 50 just by participating in the Alliance War. So you will gain experience points, but you also gain Alliance points for capturing objectives and for killing enemies. These Alliance points are tallied over the lifetime of your character for purposes like leaderboards, right? You can see who's accumulated lifetime the most amount of Alliance points, but you can also spend them like a currency on different things like titles, weapons and armor, so you can actually improve your gear just by playing the Alliance War. Yeah, you can also buy siege weapons with your Alliance points. We don't have all the details of exactly what you're going to be purchased, but these are the things that have been confirmed so far. So that's there's going to be a progression system. We know that's just kind of leaderboards. We know that the faction that takes over the Imperial City in the middle is allowed to have an emperor. Now, the highest ranked person of that alliance becomes emperor, and they unlock all kinds of special powers, and they're able to bolster their side and stuff. And they also become target number one from the other factions, right? You want to kill the opposing emperor, so that's kind of cool for the people that get really involved in it. I will never be emperor, but I'm okay with that. So I did have a chance to. So I mean, that's in general how the whole thing kind of works. It's just these mass battles and siege warfare and stuff. And when I was at ZeniMax in March, I got to actually talk to Paul Sage about. I asked him some questions about it, and I related a lot of my experiences from Guild Wars 2's World versus World, and kind of asked him how it would work over there. So one of the things I asked him was, what about faction imbalance? Okay, because that's always the problem, whether it's two factions PvPing against each other or three factions or whatever. There's always that possibility that one faction is going to be way overpopulated and have a lot more activity and just stomp the other two factions and stuff like that. And it's true that having three factions does have a little bit of a self regulation to it, because if one alliance grows too strong, the other two can kind of team up to do that, and that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But having three factions is certainly better and more even than having just two. But I asked him about specifically how they can combat that. And their response was interesting. They said that there's going to be something called campaigns. And these are instanced versions, like permanent instance versions of the Alliance War. So it's not just one big Alliance War that everybody contributes to the same thing. It is slices of it. And when I say instance, and I did mean the word permanent, it's not like it just resets, or it's it's not ephemeral. It doesn't go away. It stays permanent. And you get assigned to a campaign when you actually enter the Alliance War for the first time. And they have some sort of control, whether it's technologically, just kind of statistically, or ZeniMax can deliberately, make, some influence on this. They can control where you get assigned to. So, for example, if I'm part of the Daggerfall Covenant and I'm joining the Alliance War, they're going to actually assign me to a campaign where I'm going to be able to do the most good, right? They're not going to assign me to a campaign where the Daggerfall Covenant already has double the number of people participating than the other two factions, because that's just making the imbalance on that campaign even worse. They're going to probably put me on one where, hey, you know what, Daggerfall Covenant is slightly falling behind a little bit here in terms of population numbers, but a few more people like myself joining the battle could actually make a difference. So they have some sort of way of load balancing who goes to what campaign. Now, it's not foolproof. For instance, I might choose, to play PvP today, and they assign me to that campaign that needs my help on the Daggerfall side, but I might choose never to PvP again after that. So that really didn't do much in terms of load balancing. So it's not 100% foolproof. But the fact that they do have some sort of control or some sort of mechanism to kind of work on these things, it's better than a system where you don't. All right. Another system that like for example Guild Wars uses is they cap the number of people that can be in there at a certain number. And while that certainly can help, if your server always hits cap, right, and the other two servers you're facing never get anywhere near cap, well, you're still going to have that overbalance kind of issue. So it's going to be interesting to see how the campaign thing works. There are a couple other things about it. You can switch your campaign. Like, for example, if you get put into a campaign and your friends aren't in that one, well, that's not going to be much fun. So you do have the ability to change which campaign. But they're going to limit how often you can change your campaign, and there's probably going to be a cost to it. It might start off free, but as you change more and more often, you're going to have a fee of some sort we don't know the details on. Because that's going to try to stop anybody from just trying to constantly hop around to find the one where their faction is winning the most and then just stick to that one or whatnot, or just being a campaign hopper. They don't want campaign hoppers, but they want people to have some control over who they're playing with in terms of grouping up with your friends or your guild and stuff like that. So overall, it's an interesting system. I like how it sounds on paper and the theory of it. We'll have to see how it works once we get into it. Now, another thing with campaigns, I keep thinking of more things to say about campaigns is. I asked Paul Sage, do they reset? Because we're used to in World versus World and Guild Wars 2, a weekly reset, right? All the points get, reset after a week. All of the keeps go back to their original owners, and some of them are neutral and stuff, and the battle starts anew. And in Elder Scrolls Online, that's not going to be the case. They have the ability to reset a campaign, but they said maybe every 3 months or 6 months. They don't have an actual time in mind, but it's going to feel more permanent. They don't want it to be something where, you took over that keep and you worked all week on it and now it's reset time and you lost that keep now again. So they want things to be kind of permanent. They want things to feel like you've earned something and you get to really fight tooth and nail to hold on to it and stuff. So that's interesting. It gives you, I guess I don't know. My fear of it would be if your faction in that campaign is totally getting dominated, right? And there's no hope. A lot of times in like a World versus World environment, you go, all right, we'll wait till the next reset, and then we're going to charge forward and try again. Now, that's good and bad. Waiting till the next reset really means that people aren't going to be participating. They kind of throw in the towel, and they just like, we're not going to really care about it. And then the World versus World experience kind of dies out until the next reset. But, the opposite, if the campaigns don't reset for long periods of time, are you going to have a server that's constantly dominating and then nobody really cares from the other two factions and they never go in? Hopefully, with the injection system where they can put new life and new players into those campaigns and stuff like that, it'll combat that. But it's an interesting choice to kind of keep things more permanent. I also kind of brought up when I talked to Paul the issue that World versus World, World versus World in Guild Wars has with culling, right? So for a long time, in fact, it wasn't until March where they really fixed the culling issue, where you would have large amounts of people on the not rendering on screen for a few seconds. So if there was a huge large battle going on, you might think you might only see a few people on the screen, and then all of a sudden everybody renders in. You realize, wow, there are dozens of people here. I never even saw them. So I asked him about that, and they said that they can't have culling in Elder Scrolls Online. They have to get this right, and they are tuning the system with a lot of metrics and a lot of testing around having 200 players on the screen. Now, that's not to say they can't have more than 200 players on the screen, but that's just what they're benchmarking against, and they want that to work with no culling and be very, very smooth. And I know some people are going to have varied opinions about whether 200 is a lot or not. I'm going to say 200 people on the screen at a time is a lot. And the reason why I say that is I saw when I was at ZeniMax, they did a live demonstration of the Alliance War, and they had 30 people taking on 30 people, so 60 people. 30 people in a keep, 30 people sieging a keep, and it was a massive battle. I mean, it really looked spectacular having that many players on the screen at once. And until Guild Wars 2 fixed the culling in March, I had not seen a World versus World match that looked like that had that many players on it. Since then, Guild Wars 2 World versus World feels much more massive, and we really never really knew how many players were on the screen at once because the culling, but you know, those are big battles. So at 200 people on the screen, it is a lot by my standard, and should make for some epic battles. And like I said, don't get stuck on the number 200 either, because you know, they're just benchmarking for that. It's going to be much greater. But they said there's not going to be culling. They're really trying hard to make sure that their metrics are working and that this works right to come launch. So we'll see if they're able to pull it off. One last thing I asked is, are there any kind of perks for a guild to take over a keep and kind of claim it for their own? And I mentioned things like, can the guild like make that like a hub for themselves? Can there be like vendors and repair guys and all kinds of, you know, little conveniences in that perk? And Paul smiled coyly and said there will be perks, and we're not going to mention, you know, we're not ready to announce anything on that front. But I really hope that it's something that kind of makes you really want to stick to a certain keep and keep that. This is our guild's keep, and we're going to fight this tooth and nail, because you can kind of claim things in World versus World in Guild Wars 2 for your guild. You can claim a keep or a tower. But I don't see people really doing that all that often, or fighting tooth and nail to do it. Like, my guild is heavy into World versus World. And from all the experiences I've had with it, we've never really stuck to a keep or took it over for our own guild and stuff. And you can give out some buffs and do different things, but you don't feel invested in that keep. And so I hope that that's something that they instill in Elder Scrolls Online. Now, some cool features that we're learning more about. I mean, ZeniMax did an Ask Me Anything on a couple weeks ago about Alliance War questions specifically, and some of the things that they answered were, keep taking over a keep. One of the main tactics is to starve people out. And they asked, how does that work exactly? Well, there's lumber mills and mines and farms surrounding a keep. And if you take over those resource nodes before you try to assault the keep, it actually makes things weaker. The farms keep the NPCs strong in a keep, so wiping out someone's farm makes it so that the NPCs are weaker. Wiping out a lumber mill makes the front door and the gates go down a lot easier, and the mines will actually make the walls weaker. So if you want to do somewhat of a war of attrition, you stop those nodes from contributing to the strength of the keep, and that makes it easier to assault in the long time. So that was kind of cool. Trying to think if there's other things I need to mention. Overall, I think they have a cool system going. I think that if they launch with the alliance points and the leaderboards and the progression system all intact, then people are gonna have a lot of fun with this. They have to have all those features baked in at launch, and so far there's no indication that that won't be the case. But it looks to me that you know, it's going to be a real interesting design choice to actually see how it competes directly with something like Guild Wars 2 World versus World, right? These two features are kind of similar in and they're both, you know, going to be recently launched games, to see, you know, which one do people prefer. There's definitely some, you know, issues and areas to improve in World versus World and Guild Wars 2, but they are adding to them. Like, we saw a big patch in March that added a bunch of features, and they, you know, they have the jump on this. They have, you know, they're going to be probably out a year plus by the time Elder Scrolls comes out. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of features they add to it and how they go, versus, you know, what do we see in Elder Scrolls when it first launches in the Alliance War. So it'll be interesting to keep our tabs on that and compare the two and see where the players actually gravitate towards. In the long run. You know, obviously in the short run, there's going to be like, oh, new shiny of Elder Scrolls Online, but long term, those type of players that really like that kind of PvP experience, where will they go? And obviously Camelot Unchained just hit their Kickstarter goal, and you know, I think that's what, 2015 or so. You know, long term, that's going to be for the real hardcore realm versus realm you know, PvP players. So it's interesting to see how this will all pan out. So let me know if you have any questions about the Alliance War or PvP in Cyrodiil. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Leave me a comment in the comments field below. Throw me a like, throw me a favorite, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you can be notified when future videos are released. And you can also contact me on Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and Twitch. I'll put all that information up on the screen. And I hope everybody has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.
The trash heap has spoken. Yeah.